So welcome to the Engerati Studio Energy Talk sessions at European Utility Week. My name is Ade, and we actually have an interesting conversation here about moving smart metering, or better still, smart metering, moving beyond billing and into edge intelligence. To have this conversation, I'm actually joined by quite an expert panel of speakers. Some would probably say leaders in the smart metering space, so who better place to have that conversation? Maybe we could have had a utility as well. I'm joined by Oliver Judd, Vice President, Business Development and Partner Management, EMEA at Landis+Gyr. Carsten Nielsen, Head of Product Management, Smart Grid Solutions, Electricity Systems at Kamstrup. And Sharelynn Moore, Vice President, Global Marketing and Public Affairs at Itron. Let's level set here. And just for the purposes of being awkward and being me, I did a poll on what people think about the status of smart metering and whether we do actually need to move beyond the billing conversation and into edge intelligence, or actually just move beyond billing. And it's been a resounding yes. The poll says 89%. Actually, it's changed by 1% since our last conversation. But there's still 11% who say no. So what I want to do is go around the table and just ask you what your opinions are. Do we need to move? Do we not need to move? Or has this conversation actually moved on? Sharelynn, would you like to start?
Well, I'd be happy to. When I think about the way that the question is posed, I think that the answer is more, why wouldn't we move beyond the meter? When you think about the power of Moore's Law and technology and this whole movement of Internet of Things, the technology, the cost, and the price is coming down. Think about the capabilities in just 5 years of what we could do in our phones then versus what we can do now. Technology is unlocking new possibilities, and the cost, like I said, is making it much more accessible. And I think that is what unlocks the key of why not move beyond metering. And when we think about Internet of Things, it's more than just connecting. It's about creating true intelligence at the thing level or at the device level. And there's just a lot more capability that isn't necessarily more cost. So I guess my perspective is, if we can have technology that is for the greater good, whether we look at utility side benefits or consumer side benefits, and we don't pay more for that, who loses? So I know there's planning that needs to be involved, there's complexity in these systems, there's regulation that we need to address. But if we look at that, step back at that big picture, my response would be, let's embrace what's available and let's lever the best that we can to make our grids the best that they can possibly be.
It's probably a very rousing beginning to the conversation. Carsten, can you top that?
Not at all. I think that was actually very, very good done by Sharelynn. I couldn't have said it better myself. Basically, we see that now we have a lot of distributed intelligence out there, so why not make use of it in order to make our society smarter and better and upkeep an acceptable level of comfort in the society, while we are still looking into the scarce resources that we have. And as Sharelynn said, there's a lot of technical complexity within this, and security is also one of them, but it's all technicalities, and we can fix that, and we need to look beyond that.
Okay, so after two takes, we still believe, or we do believe, that we need to move more, and the question isn't actually whether we should or not. The question is, we definitely should, and we should start doing so now. Oliver, what do you think?
I mean, there have been quite a number of positive and good arguments why we should or already have moved, which I'm fully in agreement. I would like to look at the other 11%, which said no. And I believe there are some concerns, there are some fears, there are some unsolved or unanswered questions, like regulation, you mentioned it. From a purely economical point of view, I mean, you have such a processing power in such dense network, so why wouldn't you use it for more? However, the 11% need to be addressed, so the obstacles are moved away.
Okay, and Oliver, just by playing devil's advocate, so to speak, or me just wanting to get more info into there, can I come back to you and ask you just your thoughts on why you think, and a bit more as to why that 11% exists? Is it really just about regulation, a combination of not necessarily understanding, or, like you pointed out, a lack of trust in the actual possibilities beyond the meter?
I mean, I would emphasize on one area is more on the consumer side. I mean, there is data privacy is one topic which probably has not been fully addressed. Yeah, there has been big efforts in all legislation to kind of protect the consumer, the people, the human being at the end of the day. However, I believe the trust has not been built yet, or not been fully built. The second one is, I compare it to the telco industry. You have your phone, whatever make, yeah? And you get all kind of information on this you never wanted. And now the utility starts to play in a similar field, yeah? So from a consumer perspective, I think there are areas which trust building is still required, yeah? From a utility or DSO perspective, I mean, there has been unbundling, and now all of a sudden they shall play in a different marketplace, so to speak, yeah? And I'm not so sure if everybody digested already the first change and now come a next change. So the pace of change has increased a lot in this industry, and I believe some of the 11% would just say, yeah, it's okay, but not yet, yeah?
Okay, and do you perhaps want to jump in, maybe add anything, or?
Well, but I think it'd be remiss if we overemphasize 11% versus the 89% that see it here and now. That is, by any stretch of any imagination, the vast majority. But I think you're absolutely right. There are real concerns, and I think it's a good thing for us to continue to talk about some of those obstacles, because we collectively own, I think, overcoming the obstacles, finding solutions, and helping, whether it's education or solving the real complexities or the real issues that exist. So.
Okay, and just for you to know as well, the poll is still going live. If you want to go and put your opinion as well, please do. Maybe things will change, probably it won't. Great, so we have this idea, edge intelligence, moving beyond the meter should be where we're going. Let's look at the smart meter vision, scrolling back to what the initial idea is and what we were intending. Sharelynn, do you want to start and perhaps give us a picture of what the vision for smart metering really is?
Yeah, smart metering really, as originally defined, was how can we read that meter more frequently, and there could be selective command and control to give some capabilities such as shut off or remote disconnects, demand reset. So I think there was original belief that smart metering really is making it smart meant if we connect it, read it more frequently, and do selective command and control. And I think when we look at a smart meter vision now, it is looking much more akin to a sensor at the side of the home that is able to measure, monitor that usage, proactively notify you if conditions have changed, and even start peer-to-peer communications to triangulate issues at a transformer or localized level. So it's really extending, I think, beyond automating a meter to really becoming a smart sensor on the home as a critical asset for the DSO.
So are you kind of saying to me that it was always an edge node? It was always a node on the edge?
I think originally it was not. And I think one of the things that Itron believes is actually challenging the status quo of what we thought a smart meter was. And I think many of us, Itron included, have deployed millions of smart meters that really were just a way to automate that meter to read it more frequently. And I think the new capabilities of what we talked about really do change that paradigm, and today's smart metering is different than yesterday's smart metering. So I'm just making the distinction of what was with what is.
Okay, and Carsten, you're nodding away, so I'm inclined to believe that you agree largely.
Yeah, I do agree, and I might add to that being able to register a lot of data in the smart meter and transferring that to some sort of central processing system is not, data in itself is dumb, and big data is similarly equally dumb, but just on a bigger scale. So we need the edge intelligence, or we need the intelligence to be at the edge, to be at the smart meter, and for the smart meter to understand these data and process them, and then decide what to do with this data. Because much of the data, honestly, that we are able to register today and transfer to a central system are irrelevant at best.
Okay, and Oliver, because you've already paid a very, I wouldn't say pragmatic, but very brutal look at the reality of the situation. Do you agree as well about what the vision really was for smart smart meters and smart metering?
You know, when I look at it from a 2 steps back, not just one, to save energy or to be more efficient with our resources, I don't think the vision has changed much. I just believe that at the beginning of the smart metering kind of time, nobody could imagine at the time what can be done. So many of the areas came along the way. Like renewables integration is perfectly in the center of the vision. However, it needed a foundation, the smart meter network, to actually be able to manage such kind of resources. Yeah? So when we look at networks, obviously to have more efficient networks automatically leads to less energy consumption and less investments and less cost at the end of the day. So from this perspective, it has not changed much, but I think it's much richer now. But it has always been the foundation of a smart grid and smart community core. Eh?
Okay, so the consensus is that the possibilities are changing. The paradigm is shifting, so to speak, to use one of those ethereal words. But what are some of those edge intelligence and distributed energy resources opportunities for smart meters and smart metering? How can smart metering actually play a role in this new evolving space? Let's go around the table again. Sharelynn, what do you think?
Well, I think increasingly smart metering can be used as a tool to engage consumers in much more real-time understanding of what they're using, notifying them if power is off, notifying them in a timely manner when power is going to be back on, notifying the utility when troubled conditions exist, but also maybe even resolving some of its own issues, self-healing. We're looking at pilots where you're bringing in solar, some building level measurement and monitoring from a typical smart metering application, but the ability to micro island itself when the need exists, and having the smart meter play a key role in helping manage that connectivity. I mean, there really are some really compelling things that smart metering enables, from renewable integration, like you mentioned, through consumer engagement to much more sophisticated grid management that the utility can benefit from. So there's really, I think, kind of those 3 categories of capabilities.
And just for the avoidance of doubt, at Itron you have a global take on this. So where are you seeing these use cases? Are you seeing this predominantly in certain regions? Where we are at European Utility Week, are we seeing a lot of these in Europe as well?
I would definitely say that Western Europe and the United States are doing some of the more progressive pilots. That's where we see a lot of that, where in some of the other regions, we're really creating robust, proven, more AMI grid systems predominantly. But some of the pilots and deployments that we're doing now around renewables are happening both in Europe and discussing with customers Europe as well as US seems to be on the leading edge.
Okay, and Carsten, are you how are you seeing some of these users, engage, or end customers perhaps, or utilities engage this wider smart metering promise at the grid edge? Are you seeing use cases maybe similar or even some different use cases in your networks?
Well, I'd say quite similar to what Sharelynn has said. Being at the edge means that actually we have the smart meter has 2 interfaces, as Sharelynn mentions, one towards the utility and another towards the consumers. And in order for the smart meter to be really intelligent, then it needs to engage the consumer in an intelligent way. And I think the use cases that we see or have seen so far is usually evolves around notifying the consumer of current consumption and price signals and things like that. But I think in the future we'll see a new type of industry with service providers that will tap into the information from the smart meter in order to provide what you might call better or proper or more complex demand side management services to the consumers.
Okay, and Oliver, I don't know if the guys have already covered off what there is, or is there more to this? Is there something that we've missed?
I think for the near term, all is said almost. And obviously is I would want to come back to what I said before. We learn by walking the way, yeah? And there will be use cases coming up tomorrow, next week, next month, next quarter. I believe one of the changes can really be that it's kind of a new marketplace in the sense of we have so much more information about consumer behaviors, which allows far better tailored offerings to the individuals. Now, having said this, I mean, we were talking about the structure of the energy provision has changed from a top-down, big generation plants down to the end consumer, and now we have a distributed network of storage, renewables, central generation, and all shall work together. And similar, I would see this in the consumer world, that the consumer has been kind of at the end of the chain. Yeah, he got electricity or gas or water and got a bill. These were the two transactions fundamentally between a market player like a utility and the end consumer. With this kind of digital reach out into the home, there are new possibilities to address the consumer in a far more individual way.
Yeah, I think I agree with the point that you're making, and want to emphasize we don't even know what is possible as far as when we say engaging the consumer. But what we do know is when you have real-time access to what that customer is using, you have high-resolution data to understand maybe even the load profile of what's going on in that home, you are putting yourself in a position as a DSO to become an energy services broker, whether you provide those extended services or you're making the information or the capabilities available so that innovators that are really good at doing this can think of these new ideas, whether they're devices in the home, things on our smartphones, or programs that make the consumers more comfortable or more convenience or more control. So I think there's so much more that it's even hard to envision what's possible.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got an image here of some of those use cases and how you can do this at the edge. What about the services and the smart meter offering that you're pushing to the market? Are we moving perhaps from here's a meter and the infrastructure around it to here are some actual services, perhaps the software and the intelligence around which to do something with said data that we're offering to, say, utilities, for example, or any meter operator, so to speak? Are we seeing that kind of change with the products that are offering that we're offering to the market? Perhaps let me go around the table again. Start with you, Sharelynn.
Yes, for Itron, we see tremendous opportunity, whether we're deploying a very traditional smart metering, maybe in the Vision 1.0 of a smart metering system. We see great opportunity to not just bring the data back, but be part of the solution and creating outcomes out of that data. Whether it's analyzing the usage at a granular enough detail to do transformer load monitoring, that's a solution Itron's talking about here at European Utility Week, Itron's DTM, to be able to do that. So in traditional smart metering, we absolutely see the opportunity to take the data from these meters and create intelligence on top of that, whether it's using a cloud solution or a fully service model to be able to actually solve problems for our utilities with the data and the smart metering investment they've already made. In addition, when we talk about distributed intelligence and these new vision of smart meters, and they can solve these problems themselves, we can envision a world where apps are running on the meters, and you can buy different apps based on the type of problems that you need to solve as a utility or the type of services you want to offer your consumers. So we very much see investing in services and solutions and these analytics, both at the edge and in the cloud, as far as back office across any version of smart metering solution 5 years ago or into the next 5 years.
It's very interesting because it looks like we're painting a picture here of outcomes as a service, perhaps. Building a picture here that at the end of the day, the meter is just part of the system.
Yeah.
Carsten, do you agree with this future of more services? What do you think?
Yeah, we're actually seeing the same shift in discussions with our customers. That it's registering consumption today and bringing that information to the data center is a commodity. So now we need to make some more value of the data, because we have a lot of data, and we can actually bring a lot of extra value to our customers or to the utilities based on these data. So we're looking into ways of describing these use cases and also sort of realizing them together with our clients. And if we come back to the naysayers, the 11%, then I would say they are probably might be based on at least that we're not good enough at doing that, because there are some use cases that will still need to showcase themselves as being really good.
Okay, Oliver, and this is quite interesting because in your role as Vice President of Business Development and Partner Management, I imagine the impact of painting that picture and giving people access to that dream is probably one of the issues you have to rack with in your role. So how is that space panning out for you? Are you talking to customers about this possibility and they're going, yeah, we get it, we understand? Are you talking to partners and they're also keying in? Or is there perhaps a gap, maybe a knowledge gap, an understanding? What's your take?
Let me answer in two parts. Yeah, I strongly believe that the more service-oriented business, more service-oriented utility value proposition will increase a lot. Now we have a system in place which is the smart metering. We have, on the other hand, we still have a gap. When you, for example, want to bridge into the home, there is still quite an obstacle to pass. So one area which we at Landis+Gyr always promote is open standards, because there is a gap. We cannot connect to the home, or the home cannot connect to the meter, or at least not easily. Yeah? So we as an industry will need to step up there as well to open up. Actually, you were mentioning applications, and when we look at other businesses, the big winning factor is that they open up and anybody can add an application. Some excellent, others questionable maybe. So and on this basis, an opening up is absolutely required. When we come to the second part, is about partners. Do we talk to customers? How do they feel? Absolutely. I'm convinced this will generate a new ecosystem actually, because the traditional players, yeah, you will see all of them having a booth here, but you see lots of people which you would not have seen 10 years ago at such a trade show. Yeah? So this means there will be new players, there will be a different ecosystem, and companies like Landis+Gyr would need to form partnerships to address all the aspects of this new challenge or opportunity. Yeah?
Okay, that's. Oh, sorry, Sharelynn, did you want to add something to that?
No.
Well, that's great because it leads us on to those realities and the practicality of actually achieving this reality, this dream, this picture. So let's perhaps go around and look at what we're actually doing, or what needs to be done to get us there. You've already painted a picture there about opening up, needing to include some of the wider players and the concentric circles. Sharelynn, one of the things that you were really keen on talking about was the behind the meter conversation, and I was wondering how you're factoring that into, or how the market is, or how the market is and what the market needs to do to include that behind the meter possibility into the conversation.
Well, I think the biggest challenge is from a regulatory standpoint, and ensuring that utilities are being incented and encouraged to take advantage of the capabilities that are available today, without as rigid of a view of what a smart metering could and should be. So I think that regulation is a key. The other component is to continue the relentless pursuit of standards and interoperability. We recognize, much like you mentioned, that we need to create ecosystems. We need to be able to create choice, and we've been making very great progress, but continuing to support this standards making and the regulatory, I think, are two of the really important elements, and then fostering this environment of collaboration with events such as this. So DLMS COSM, a lot of bodies working very hard on this, and it's so that's something that we're very committed to.
Okay, and Carsten, you've probably got the tricky task now of perhaps mentioning another area that needs to change. I remember in our previous conversations, you talked about the communication standards being enabled, the privacy and security issues being dealt with. Will these and do these also factor into some of the challenges around the bigger metering conversation, the wider edge intelligence opportunity?
Oh yeah, definitely, most definitely. I mean, just as Oliver said, being at the edge also gives us the opportunity to, that's a foothold inside the consumer's homes. But if we cannot connect to anything out there, then what's the point? So we definitely need to open up our standards. We need to make sure, as an industry, that we give the vendors of household gadgets a possibility of attaching or at least some way of communicating with the meter in order to really get something out of these data that we can actually provide from the meter. So we're working together with the European Smart Meters Industry Group in order to try and open up these protocols and make sure that they are interoperable. But it is a huge task.
It does sound like it as well. Look, we're getting to the end of the session, and I want us to round off on just a round the table thing. You know, for someone tuning into this session, perhaps maybe even the audience right now, if there is a DSO representative sat there, or a regulator perhaps who's curious about the changes, Lord knows, what is that one piece of advice you can give to them in terms of enabling or engaging this new landscape? Sharelynn, do you want to kick off?
Well, I think I've made a few points about embracing technology and taking advantage of what's available, and this advancement technology is going on outside of our industry, and it has a lot of promise. So I think I've covered that already. So I think what I would close with is maybe a more practical point, that even with the standards and interoperability and the promise of everything just coming together, there's a lot of planning to do these projects well, because every utility is unique. Every customer segment, based on what region they are in Europe, is unique. And I think that planning up front and creating a solution and a roadmap as a utility and that is unique to you, and picking the partners that can help you fulfill that vision, is, I think, an incredibly important part of the process. And I think that helps make or break really successful deployments.
Okay, Carsten, would you like to?
Yeah, well, actually my advice would be to flip the thinking upside down. Stop worrying about technology, because that's just a practicality. We can figure that out later on. Think about what is it, what main features do you want to provide, what main services do you want to provide, what are your basic business needs, and then based on that, I'm pretty sure with all the different protocols and standards we have out there, we'll probably figure out a technical solution to the problems. But figure out what is it that you actually want to do.
And Oliver, do you want to finish us off, or maybe even a cautious take on the situation?
No, I'm not sure whether I'm in position to give an advice. However, I think one of the observations is that the technology cycles are getting faster and faster, or shorter and shorter. And I believe for all of us, not just DSOs or regulators, we need to get comfortable with a faster pace, with a much faster pace. And then I believe exactly what you two said, things will fall in place.
Well, I think that's a brilliant place to bring this discussion to an end. So thank you all for your contributions and insights.
Yeah, that was fun.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Carsten. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you all for tuning into this session. If you'd like to see more information and insights on smart metering, perhaps the edge conversation, intelligence and data analytics, please check out the other sessions on our screen. Thank you.